you have legal questions. Amy the attorney has the answers. Welcome to today's show. And here's Amy.
Hello, I'm Amy the attorney. My guest today is Tracy Spradlin of Spradlin and Kennedy. I'm very excited to talk to her about expungements. Tracy is a criminal defense lawyer, has been practicing in Kansas City for quite some time, and I'm just going to ask Tracy, why don't you give just a short bio of yourself?
Sure, yeah. So as you said, Amy, my name's Tracy, and I am a criminal defense attorney here in the Kansas City metropolitan area. I'm licensed in both Missouri and Kansas, and while we do mostly criminal defense work, with some of the improvements in the Missouri expungement statute, we've been doing a lot more expungements. And the purpose behind the expungement statute was to increase the availability of job opportunities for Missourians, while also helping them clear up their record if they've had a significant period where they have no longer had any convictions, they've shown that they've turned their life around, and they should be rewarded for that in the eyes of the legislature.
Okay, so let me first ask, what is an expungement?
So an expungement is when you ask the court, the circuit court in the jurisdiction where you received conviction, to seal or expunge, for better terminology, all of the records, including the arrest, the charge, the conviction, and any subsequent, whether or not it resulted in a license suspension to your driving record, or if you had any probation records that followed that. My job is to make sure that all of those records become sealed so that you can appropriately answer on any employment applications or any school applications that you have not been convicted. So the point of the statute is to take you to the point you were before you ever pled guilty to that charge. Now, there are some restrictions as far as any kind of licensing with nursing is a really good one. So some occupations would still require you to disclose that, but I've still found in my experience that it still helps to be able to say that those have been expunged, even if you have to disclose them. But for the majority of other employment opportunities, you can truthfully answer no, that you've not been convicted once you've officially received that expungement.
All right, why do people want to get their record expunged?
So the number one reason is jobs. They are getting held back, or it keeps popping up on employment background checks. Other reasons are, I want to go back to school. I want to, it's always been hanging around and I feel like I can't get past it. I get a lot of people that have moved out of state and this is still popping up while they're trying to get, licenses in other states for various things. So mostly it's job related. Every once in a while, somebody, needs something cleared off their driving record, things like that. These statutes are great for people who, when they were a kid, they got in trouble, they had a drug possession charge, and then they changed their life, but now this is haunting them. They can't get, they can't get grants for school, they can't get moved up in their job, things like that. These are perfect for them. But one of the saddest things I have to do is tell people that they aren't eligible, or that I don't think that they'll be able to get the expungement. And one of the most common things that we expunge are drug possession charges, felony drug possession, assaults, as long as they're not domestic violence. But the things that can't be expunged, anything that puts you on the sex registry, anything that's an A felony, anything that has been classified as domestic violence, kidnapping, certain things that you would expect. And then there are certain, the statute, the way that it's written, sets out several things that aren't eligible. And so one of the things we just have to do is just call us and we'll tell you if it's eligible or not, and that's the hardest things.
If somebody is coming to see you or talk to you on the phone, what are 3 questions that person who has this felony on their background should be asking you? What are the 3 questions that people, need to ask somebody that they're going to hire for an expungement?
So you need to, as the caller, you need to know where you got the conviction, because that's one of the things that I'm going to ask, because that dictates every courthouse charges a different filing fee. Every courthouse is a different distance away from me, which figures into cost, things like that. And I can also tell you, based on what I know about those jurisdictions, a little bit more about how involved you're going to have to be, whether you have to show up or not. So where you got the conviction also helps us find records if we need to, because we need to know the date you were charged. We need to know who arrested you, because that's an agency we want to add. We need to know when you pled guilty, and we need to know when the case was fully resolved, because your 3 years or your 7 years doesn't start running until the date that the case was closed. Now, if it was something where you just paid a fine, it happens on that day. If it was something where you're on probation, then we need to wait until we get the date that your probation was closed out. And so that's one of the things that we need to look at. And thankfully, most records are on CaseNet for us. And as attorneys, we can kind of see some more stuff than what the normal person can see. So if you can tell me, kind of generally what time frame, I can find it and look at it and see if you're eligible or not. The next thing you would need to know is if you have any subsequent convictions, any other misdemeanors or felonies that I need to know about, because I also, like I said before, need to make sure that you're not ineligible due to any subsequent convictions. And then finally, I need to know if you have anything coming up, in the next week or so, or if you have anything pending that you're hoping to get this wrapped up before, because like I said, I can't do it in less than probably 3 months, but then also I have to allege that you don't have any current pending charges or anything like that. So if you are currently charged with something, then I need to know that too. So I would say those are the big major things.
Okay, that's great. Hey, so when can someone get their record expunged? If I have just gotten off parole a week ago, can I come into your office and get whatever I was paroled off the record?
No, it doesn't work like that. So like I said, for you can get unlimited infractions, and those are generally municipal court fines, things like that. You can get unlimited amounts of those expunged. Ordinance violations and misdemeanors, you can get 2. And the waiting period is 3 years from the date of disposition. And disposition is kind of a fancy lawyer word for case closed. Right. And case closed doesn't mean the last time you were in front of a judge. It means the last time you maybe had your probation visit where they closed out, or if you had to do community service when that was all done, or when your diversion was up, things like that. So that's why we have to do a really good job, because we don't want to file it and then find out you aren't eligible, and then to have it get rejected or dismissed and you can't file it for another year, if that makes sense.
Okay, it does. All right, so what about felonies? You gave me misdemeanors is 3 years?
Yeah, so felonies is 7 years. So it would be 7 years from the date that your case was closed out, and your case is not closed out until you get done with probation or parole. So right. 7 years from that date.
What about, you use the term habit and conduct, and we have talked about criminal conduct, traffic tickets or whatever else after the original incident. Are there any other factors in habit and conduct that either are outlined in the statute or are part of sort of expungement law?
Not really. It's kind of one of those vague, just like lawyerly terms that just means, can we show or can we provide evidence that you are no longer the type of person who is going to commit the offenses that you're trying to get expunged. So if it was a drug possession charge, can we show that you've had a clean record for the last 7 to 10 years? One of the things that I like to do when I have my clients come up is we put you under oath and we go through and you testify that everything I've alleged in the petition is true, but then I just ask you about why you're trying to get this expungement. And you can tell the judge, like, I've been, working at the same job for 10 years and I haven't been able to move up because every time they want to promote me to management, I have this. And so things like that show that you've been employed for a long time, or you have children, or, what you've been doing in the time since you had this conviction that has made a substantial impact on the way your life is going. And so those are the kind of things we just generally will ask. Every once in a while, we might bring a character witness if it's one of those things where we think we might need it. And then you can have somebody else attest to, how you are living day to day and that you're no longer a threat to the safety of the public and that your habits and conduct have changed.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so let me ask you, this is a this is somewhat of a lawyerly question. Is there anything I'm missing that I didn't ask you about expungements that you should tell me about expungements right now?
Well, I will just say that there are a ton of things that are eligible, but there are some very common things that are ineligible that people call me about all the time. I have a lot of people that want to get like forgery or domestic violence cases. And domestic violence, unfortunately, is one of those situations where a lot of people have been convicted and potentially some of them are way more serious than others. And some of them maybe just by virtue of them just pleading guilty to get it over with, maybe they wouldn't have been convicted otherwise, but I can't do anything about those. I can't do anything about subsequent DWIs after your first one. And I get a lot of calls about that. So I hate telling people bad news and giving them, that I can't get something expunged. And the other thing is I might be able to get something expunged, but you have 2 other felony convictions. And so the question is, do you want to spend the money having that expunged and still having these other 2 felonies? Is it really going to make that much of a difference for you? So, and those are the conversations that we should have whenever you call, because it may never, getting this one conviction expunged may not change anything for you in the long term.
All right, so if you want to reach Tracy about an expungement, please click the number on the screen. It's also in the text below the video and will be in the transcript of the video. She would love to hear from you. Obviously, somebody that is very personable and willing to give a free consultation. She'll take time out of her day to examine whether or not you're eligible for this expungement and what it can do for you, and then possibly what the challenges are for you getting expunged.